Yes!
Dude, what are you doing?
That is a villainous line.
Hey, my name is Brian McCatton, and I'm making this video to gush about Obsession. There's a lot of good and interesting looking movies coming out in 2026, and I've really been making time to watch a lot of film and get my ass to the movies recently. And Obsession was on my list for a while, like it's been on my radar, and I finally got to see it a couple days ago, and I wanted to share my thoughts. So let me be the first to say that I love horror. This is coming from a perspective of someone who loves the genre. I love spooky shit. I love reading stuff with horror elements into it. I love watching horror movies. Took a horror writing class in college. I write stuff with horror elements. So this is full disclosure. This is someone who likes horror. So if you don't like horror, then we're not going to see eye to eye on this. And not to over exaggerate off the bat, because the first part of this video is just gonna be me gushing. Not to over exaggerate, but this is one of the most well-rounded films that I've ever watched. Like the dialogue was natural and it was tight. The use of lighting was excellent, particularly facial lighting throughout the movie. The use of sound was strong, but not just like not in a cheap way, because horror movies have a very big reliance on sound elements. And I think a lot of movies use music to tell you how to feel. And when I was in the movie, I didn't really notice the music too much. And it wasn't like the reason why I was scared or my heart was beating or I was like covering my eyes or I had my collar up like this. The reason why what is it? I was in that scenario, the reason why I was scared was because of the situations and the unsettling nature of the film. That being said, the music was good. The sound use was pretty top drawer. So I really like that a lot. And also the like change in sound was used very well at the scene where they're having a nice date. So that's enough glazing. Let's get on to the actual movie. Obsession is a monkey's paw style movie, like kind of be careful what you wish for. It reminded me when I first saw the trailer, it reminded me of one of my favorite short stories that I think I read in high school in Miss Johnson's class. If she's still kicking, I'll be surprised. That woman has been old my whole life. But yeah, shout out Miss Johnson. Shout out teachers in general. We read The Chaser by John Collier, which is about basically a potioner or salesperson, I think in Louisiana, who makes a love potion. It's basically this guy who's in love, and
Two different
he
people,
wants this
by the
woman to
way.
fall in love with him, and it's kind of assumed that like this guy is biting off more than he can chew in this love potion and will alter both their lives for the worse. And so that being one of my favorite short stories, and I think it's a really good piece of short story. I'm a bit of a short story connoisseur. I was really excited for a movie to kind of fill in the gaps of my imagination and how that type of story would play out. So with that being said, now that I'm saying it out loud, I might have already liked the movie conceptually going into it, but the execution was flawless. Specifically, there is a lot going on with the storytelling and specifically the types of horror. I feel like recently, films that I've been gravitating a lot towards lately are ones that attack horror from a lot of different angles. Like in Midsummer is kind of like my classic example. For those of you who have watched the film, you'll know what I mean. There is kind of a type of horror for everything. Like there is really disturbing scenes. There's stuff that makes you uncomfortable. There's food horror. There is cult horror. There is like weird kind of like religious connotations. There is not knowing where you are, being unfamiliar like time of day. There is the horror of like losing your family. There's the horror of going through like losing your sexual horror. Like width. It doesn't have that width of horror. It does have a lot though, and that is something that I've really been enjoying recently in a lot of more modern horror masterpieces. I think this is joining that category. It is all over the place, and this one, Obsession, doesn't have that. These ones were more linked, but I feel like there was kind of a couple different horror stories going on inside of this horror movie. I think the most obvious perspective there is Bear. Bear is kind of the POV character through on. I'm not gonna call him the hero of the story because I'll get to him later. I hated this guy, but you obviously have someone who has made a wish that they did not. First off, they didn't think that it was actually going to come true. Secondly, they are experiencing just like almost directly the horror of someone watching them while they sleep, someone like screaming at them and causing a scene, someone being overbearing, someone doing like being disgusting, someone who murders their friends. And that is the kind of first story here for like the horror aspects of it. The other kind of lighter stories that are going on is from the friends' point of view. They're watching two of their friends get into a relationship, which for some of you might be a horror movie in and of itself. But they're also watching their relationship change with that person, both Bear and Nikki. And they also are watching both of them deteriorate, both as people and also as friends. I think that there's commentary in there, but it's not going to be the focus of this video. And I think that the less obvious, but to me, the most impactful horror storyline that was going on in this movie was Nikki's. And I'm not talking about Freaky Nikki, where she's possessed and that's the one that we see for most of the movie. I'm talking about Nikki as like the person who is essentially possessed in this film. So I'm going to talk about Bear's story and then I'm going to talk about Nikki's story. So before I go into each one of these arcs, I really want to hammer down on the definition of the word obsession. Merriam-Webster describes it as a persistent, disturbing preoccupation with an often unreasonable idea or feeling. Unreasonable idea or feeling. That is a very important part, and it's persistent and disturbing. I think a lot of times we put almost too much emphasis on titling works and stuff like that. This one I feel like deserves a lot of emphasis because the obsession in this movie, even though like the obvious answer is Nikki, Freaky Nikki, becomes obsessed with Bear, they even kind of say the line in the movie. Realistically, Bear has the obsession with Nikki. It goes both ways. It goes both ways. And I don't think it clicked with me that that was almost kind of a part of the movie until I walked out, until I was driving home on the freeway and I just had to pretend like I walked out of that movie like a normal person and nothing went on. But the obsession goes two ways. And that's also something that I didn't clock when I was 16 years old or something like that, reading The Chaser. The obsession in these stories, there's the preemptive obsession of the person who makes this wish, and then there is the secondary obsession of the target, who's realistically the victim in this scenario. And let me be clear, because Bear, bad stuff happens to Bear. He is not the victim of the story. Nikki is the victim of the story. Bear is a friend. As he starts off, I don't even know how to describe this guy. Actually, no, it makes me mad to describe this guy. Bear starts off as a normal dude. They're all in their 20s, like all the main characters and stuff like that, this friend group. And he is a coward. That is the best and most distinct way that I can describe him. Bear is timid. He's scared of his feelings. He's scared of losing his friend, and he's scared of making the friend dynamic weird, but he is also too much of a coward to actually express his feelings. So with that, he makes this wish. He doesn't actually think it's gonna work, but there's still the sentiment there that he wishes Nikki to love him more than anything else in the world. And it happens. Immediately, stuff starts changing.
Nikki's disposition towards him changes. They go back to his place. They hook up. Their dynamic changes. They start to be together as a couple, him and Freaky Nikki. And then she starts acting insane. Like she acts like crazy. And it really makes sense that the POV character in this film is a man, because if this were happened to a woman, I'm pretty sure she would have gotten the ick like immediately. And that would have been that. And it would have been either a much shorter or much more like volatile, more movie. But this dude has made a wish. And the thing that he's wanted for so long, for years, of having this relationship with Nikki is coming to fruition. And despite all this crazy stuff that's going on, she watches him when she sleeps, yells at him, like acts unreasonable. She duct taped the door. When I saw that, oh, my soul left my body. My soul left my body. Basically, things keep on getting worse. Like they go from small things of like, oh, that is like strange, that is weird, to, in my mind, in any sane person's mind, absolute batshit crazy deal breakers. But he's still going back to our definition of obsession. He is obsessed with the idea of him and Nikki being together. He's obsessed with Nikki, even though the person that he's having a relationship with is not Nikki. It's Freaky Nikki. It's Nikki, but it's like the body of Nikki, but being controlled by some other forces. And he knows that. There is overwhelming evidence that he is not actually fulfilling his dream. This is a shadow or a mirror or a like kind of fucked up evil clone of his dream. And even yet, he's so intoxicated with the idea of him and Nikki being a couple, of her falling in love with him, and achieving kind of everything that he wanted as like this romantic fulfillment, that he can't stay away from all these crazy, even though she's giving him almost every reasonable reason to GTFO, still goes along with it. And it all comes to a forefront where Nikki Freaky Nikki kills both of his other friends in the friend group. He doesn't know who to talk to. He is being smothered in this obsessive actions, these selfish actions from Freaky Nikki, because he can't control herself. And ultimately, he decides to try to kill himself. And even yet, this is why I say that coward is the most succinct way. From the beginning, all throughout the movie, Bear is a coward. He's too scared to ask out Nikki the right way. He is too scared to come to terms that she is not okay and that he is not dating Nikki. He is dating a different iteration of Nikki. He is too cowardly to tell the truth to his friends. He is too cowardly to take the right steps to correct this situation. And when all the chips are down and he decides to use the pills to try to kill himself, even then he tries to make himself throw up to where he still accept. That's where Bear's obsession comes in, is that he is so unreasonable with, like, even when stuff is going crazy and Nikki is obviously not right and she has like the scalp of her friend and shit on her fucking head, he is still too much of a coward to not only free himself from this situation and this idea, but also free her from it. And I didn't really realize, like, there's some people in movies that you kind of instantly hate, like, you're supposed to hate them and you're, "All right, I immediately got a bad taste in my mouth." I really didn't have that too much with Bear at probably the first, like, 30 minutes. And then, like, as the movie went on and it was hard to have sympathy for him. One, because he kept on putting himself in this every time he walked into the house, every time he walked back into his place, I was like, "Dude, what are you doing? You are going back into hell." But also, the more that I chewed on this movie and the more I talked about it with some friends and the more that I was just thinking about it at work or whatever, the more I just disliked him. I his actions were unbelievable. And this kind of ties in with Nikki's horror story. We basically Bear's horror story is bad stuff is happening to him and his dream is polluted by the strength of fulfillment essentially. Nikki's horror story is so much different, and in this case Bear is the villain. In my opinion, the two most important scenes in the movie to really understand Nikki's horror story is actually there's kind of three. There's when she gets dropped off and then the wish happens and she comes back. Bear and Freaky Nikki are talking, and then there is a moment, just seconds, where Nikki comes to her senses and then is drawn back. There's an obvious state of confusion. And for a second, we see Nikki trying to fight off Freaky Nikki, and she obviously doesn't know what's really going on. She's very confused spatially. The second of these three is directly after that when they go to Bear's place and they are in bed and they like kiss and hook up. There is another like snap moment where Nikki does not understand what's going on because she gets consciousness. Basically, she is just from her point of view and her perspective, she is basically teleported from outside of her house, actually inside of her house, to back to Bear's car and then to Bear's room. That is Nikki's perspective. Don't mix up Nikki's body with Nikki's consciousness here because this is really important. These two scenes are kind of a coupled package deal. They happen sequentially, so it might be like no duh, right? But they show that even though this is happening to Nikki, it's not like Nikki is charmed. It's not that it's Nikki acting differently. It is a force that is controlling Nikki, and Nikki is not in the driver's seat. And they color everything that Bear does. Bear, as a friend who's known her for that long, and you can tell that he knows Nikki is not right in the head. He has given evidence of this firsthand and over the course of the movie, and yet, as a friend, as someone that Nikki trusts, Bear just keeps on abusing and abusing and abusing Nikki and her body, and is despite given overwhelming evidence, Nikki has to watch someone who she thought was her friend basically abuse her. And this ties in with the third scene, kind of in this most important scenes for understanding Nikki's story, is when they're in bed. This is later in the film. When they're in bed and Sarah texts Bear
Bear gets up to go meet Sarah outside, what is it, the park in her car, and at that point, we didn't know if Freaky Nikki was there, we didn't know if she was asleep, like, I was waiting for another, like, crazy thing to happen, and then Nikki says something to Bear. Nikki is basically saying, like, "Hey, the thing that's controlling me is asleep right now, like, please just kill me, just end it all, because I am going through hell. I I don't want this anymore. I don't wanna I it's excruciating." And Bear flippantly says, "Oh, is being with me that bad?" Like, yes, yes! Nikki obviously understands that she has no control over her life right now, and we get from, like, the other scene in the car where Bear calls the helpline for, like, the Willow Wish thing, and we understand that whatever she is going through is unspeakable, and even yet, she is asking Bear, her friend, someone who should care about her, to end it all because she's not right in the head. She's obviously acting weird. She's obviously not all there. She tells him that Nikki has never been with Bear. It's been this other entity, and Bear knows that, and yet Bear flippantly says, "Is being with me so bad?" That is a villainous line. That is a villainous line. Imagine how Nikki feels. She's probably scared out of her mind, and she just has to sit there and wait until she doesn't have control of her own autonomy in being. And the person you try to throw out a line to say, "Hey, dude, end it all, please. Neither of us will have to deal with it." And Bear is too selfish and too much of a coward and too obsessed with the idea of him and Nikki that he throws it away. He says, "No, what my wants and my dreams and my delusions are more important than your suffering." That's what makes Bear just despicable. So going on in this movie, we have the POV character, and we can understand why he's obviously scared, and the things that happen to him are scary. They are crazy, yet he brings it upon himself both literally and he sustains it, but also he is wronging Nikki, the object of his desire, every step of the way. Now, you could say that freaky Nikki, the thing that's, possessing Nikki is doing this to both of them. But realistically, as we've already talked about, Bear is ridiculously complicit. He refuses to accept the reality of this situation to feed his own delusions and his own obsessions. And he doesn't want to let go. And he might think that Nikki is obsessed with him. It's Freaky Nikki who's obsessed with him. Freaky Nikki is obsessed with him, and he is obsessed with the idea of him and Nikki. But realistically, he doesn't even have that. He doesn't have that. Nikki herself in that bed scene when before Bear left for the car, she said, "We've never been together." So not only is Bear not with Nikki, he's being tormented by Freaky Nikki, but he's holding on to something that is neither of those things. He's holding on to like this third ambiguous idea, the like platonic idea of their relationship, his life with Nikki. And that too is scary, but I'm not gonna let him off the hook. Like, I still hate the guy, and I honestly think that, like, he deserved it. But those are the 2 stories that one of them is very obvious. One of them is the kind of top layer bear, like,
no good, horrible, very bad wish coming to fruition. But then there is this implied horror for Nikki's story. And I think that those 2 storylines in particular, again, there's, the friend's point of view and stuff like that, but those 2 coming together and how Bear acts to Nikki and how he personally handles the situation, that's what makes it, 1, so scary and uncomfortable, but also such a damn good movie. I do wanna end this off by giving my flowers to, uh, Indy Indy Navarrete. She was lights out. The range that they needed for Nikki and Freaky Nikki to be pulled off was unreal, and I'm just gonna say I'm a fan, I'll watch whatever she's in. Everybody else in the movie I felt was good, but she was unbelievable. She was unbelievable. That was one of the best acting performances I've ever seen. In essence, I would give this 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10, 105%. I think I had a couple of problems with the movie, but, like, overall, it was lights out, man. It was lights out. And I know it was lights out because 'cause I've been thinking about it since. Obviously, I don't think that this was the most original idea ever. I do think that the modern take on it and the way that it attacked it from so many angles made it a very modern film. And I hope that one, Andy Navarrete gets whatever role I'm sure that I'll be seeing more of her, and I intend to watch whatever movie that she's in. But I also hope that the creators of this film get their bag and can create more because I was sat down for this film, and I thought it was a great modern take on an age old idea of the monkeys paw curls, the chaser, be careful what you wish for because it might come true.